Well, I have a friend, actually it's a friend of my folks, and his dad always kept a journal, and so I would say he would have been about the same age as my grandfather. And this gentleman, he was going through his dad's journal, and in the journal it said out of the Quileute they were going to court two young ladies and their last names were Cullen. So they had a ranch out at the Quileute Prairie, which is really quite amazing. They quit farming out there because they said the ground wasn't good and they were having trouble making money and everything. But there really is a Cullen connection to Forks, which is a little bit eerie. The house that they've picked for the Cullen house in Forks was indeed owned by a doctor. He worked at Forks Hospital. He had 4 children, and one of them was adopted. So you better watch out.
We've got vampires and werewolves.
What you'd have to do is go deep into the forest and look there, because as you know, vampires don't do well out in the bright sun. They sparkle quite a bit. And so back in the forest, it's much more likely to be able to spot them. But on a rainy day, you might see them walking down Forks.
You know, we have owls, there's coyotes, there are deer, elk, little rodents running around, all of that. All of that kind of adds to a mystique about the forest. And of course the wind's blowing through the forest and the rain, and when it rains in Forks and you're in the forest, it's a whole different experience. I have woods behind my house. We used to play in the woods as trees, jump from vine maple to vine maple, and it was just a second home to us. But I can honestly tell you there were certain woods that we would never go into, and I don't know why, but we didn't. It was because someone lived on the other side of it that was kind of scary or whatever. I was talking with a young man, we were talking about this forest that you never went into. We lived in different parts of town, but we both knew that that forest you didn't go into. And I don't know why, but it was kind of a funny thing that you just stayed clear of that forest. So I don't know what looms in there.
The vampires are around only when it's rainy and dark, and God knows we have a lot of those days.
Rumors going around on occasion of something like that, but there's never been any reports that have been related or documented for sure that has anything to do with what's going on here.
People are really reluctant to believe the story, but he said the only way people would really truly believe it was, unfortunately, if we were to actually capture one, live or dead, and actually bring it into the authorities to know for sure.
The people that have told me stories are people that I would say are extremely credible, and I would never say, you're crazy, this isn't real.
The most crazy thing that happened, that would probably be recently running into the Cullens on the other side of the treaty line. We saw Edward, Bella, Jasper, and Alice right on First Beach in La Push.
Actually, the swans are kind of in my neighborhood.
I don't know any vampires.
There could be some truth to it.
A vampire? No.
I knew several people through the years that went to school with me. You know, Forks was a small school, so you knew pretty much everyone, and whoever lived in the Rickson house was always, you always knew that, oh, they lived in that big, beautiful house. And then when we found out it was the house that Stephanie Meyer had picked, and the way I found out is a friend of mine happened to belong to the Mormon church, and she had gone to church one day after Stephanie Meyer had come here to do a book signing, and they had asked her how she had come up with this house. And so this friend of mine was explaining that she had looked in the ads, and I don't know whether she had gone online or whether it was when she was actually here at that time. She didn't explain that, but she said there was this house that just fit in, and that's what she was describing, and it was indeed the Rickson house. So that's how we all knew that that was the house that she had picked, because she had mentioned this as church, and my friend said, oh, that was a house I grew up in when I was a little girl, and so it made it really exciting. The day that the DVD was released, that house caught on fire, and it burned pretty much to the ground. The front facade is still there, but it was gutted inside, and it was so sad. I mean, it was almost 100 years old, 98-year-old house. It has 18 rooms, just as Stephanie Meyer describes. We're just so happy that she chose the rainiest, gloomiest place in the continental United States to place her characters at. I mean, if nothing else, it is kind of a fun scenario that maybe some of these things had happened, just for the romantic sense of it, since the Cullens are such a distinct kind of vampires. You know, there's always things that are unexplainable. And with DNA the way it used to be and what it is now, I'm guessing there probably won't be nearly as many stories in this day and age that there were before. But I guess it's kind of a fun thing to think that maybe there is something that works in the woods that's taking care of things. We have Bigfoot, so there's always been that legend, so there is a possibility, I guess.
I would call myself a twiaholic. I had got to the point where, of course, I'm so obsessed, I ended up here in Forks, Washington.
Why twihards? Why does this cultural phenomenon exist?
We're pulling in St. Helens, and we're just coming over the bridge, and we're like, oh, I don't know where it is, you know, we're freaking out. We just look over, and we see the movie trailers, and we scream. We're screaming so loud. We get down there, and people who are working on the movie are looking at us because they can hear us through the car. It's ridiculous, and we're just screaming our heads off.
It was so fun because we were so obsessed with the books and with the characters, and being there while they're actually making a real movie. I mean, not a lot of people can say that they were there when it happened, when it started, and it's a really good bragging right, I suppose, to have.
I'm Allie Kiger. I'm Chandler Nash.
I'm Tori Rantle.
And we're the Bella Cullen Project.
Being in Forks, the setting of the book, and going to conventions, you know, across the country.
Yeah, it's cool being invited to these different little Twilight gatherings, and like they fly us out, and we're just like getting the star treatment.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's awesome.
The star treatment.
Just because, well, not really, but
it's actually really humbling.
Yeah.
I read the books, at the time only 3 of them were out, and I read them all in a very short amount of time and thought, man, these are awesome. It was kind of kicking around in my head all the time, and I've always been a hobbyist musician and songwriter, you know, just kind of for fun. And my wife suggested to me one day, well, why don't you write a song about Twilight? And I thought, well, that's kind of a good idea. I could make it cool sounding without it being overtly Twilight, you know, so I started writing some songs and kind of